All right. Good morning, everyone. Like Kendall said, welcome back to part three for your contact hours or certification portions. Today, we're going to wrap up with the Virginia Department of Historic Resources and the VCRIS information and all that good stuff. So you can ask all your questions today, get them answered, and place those in the chat, and we'll kind of either stop along the way or we'll get all the questions at the end, but we'll try and get them answered before we finish up today. Also, don't forget to make sure you're on mute as we go through the recording today. And I think that's pretty much all the reminders. So, Jenny, if you'd like to introduce and take it away.
Right. Hi, I am Jenny Belleville Marion. I am a project review archaeologist at the Department of Historic Resources. I'm typically the person that you will be talking to when submitting projects to DHR for review. So we're going to go through the slides. If you've seen this before, it'll, look familiar. If you haven't, it should not take the full 2 hours. The last couple times it did not. So unless you guys have lots of questions, but let's get started. We at the Department of Historic Resources, we encourage and support the stewardship and use of Virginia's architectural, archaeological, and historic resources. We have over 46,000 archaeological sites in our database. There's over 676 easements that cover over 42,000 acres of land. We're a relatively small agency. We have about 60 people. We have a main office in Richmond and regional office in Roanoke and Stevens City. So we do cover the state, and we do a lot for historic resources throughout the entire Commonwealth. We have 5 divisions. The community services, there are the archaeologists and architectural historians who work with historic property owners and managers and local governments. They help with ongoing preservation and identification of resources. They also work closely with the Preservation Incentives Division. Those are the people who do the tax credit, the easement programs, things like that. So those two work very closely together. Then there's state archaeology program. They do state-run excavations, and they work with avocational groups like the Archaeological Society of Virginia. They also manage and curate the state archaeological collections. Then we have the Survey and Register program, or the Survey and Data Management Division. They do things like the highway marker program. So if you've seen highway markers on the, along the roadways, they also help with state archives and the National Register. So they keep track of all that data. And then there's review and compliance, which is the division that I work for. We typically review projects that receive federal or state funding. We check them for effects to historic properties. We also provide technical assistance on projects they may not have that regulatory review. A lot of localities, counties and stuff will ask us for technical assistance on if a project coming in will have effects to historic properties, even though there may not be that federal nexus or a state nexus that really requires a review. We still offer assistance when we can. We deal with the laws and regulations. The most important one that we typically talk about is the National Historic Preservation Act, or Section 106. Section 106 requires that federal agencies consider historic properties during review of an undertaking. Our review process also is integrated with NEPA. And then also state level projects can fall under the Antiquities Act or the Environmental Impacts Review. So we review state projects that fall under those kind of reviews. The reason why we review a lot of the DCR Ag BMP projects is because the federal funding comes through to the state and then passes out. So we still are reviewing that and treating it as a Section 106 type project, even though it's being dispersed through DCR. Our division primarily does the reviews for these types of projects. I typically do any kind of things that deal with agriculture type stuff. So any USDA, NRCS, things like those agencies, or solar projects. If you have any questions about that, I will be the person who reviews them. So yeah, again, my name is Jenny Pelvo-Marion. This is the review process. This is when we receive something. This is what we do pretty much with every project. Call it the 4-step process. This is the federal process, but we use it even for state ones because we like to be consistent with our reviews. Essentially, an applicant will initiate the process and then determine if there's an undertaking. If there's potential to cause effects to a historic property, then we will, recommend that historic properties be identified within the area of potential effect. And then we assess if those impacts are actually adverse impacts. So for instance, a pipeline, has ground disturbing activities. So there is potential for archaeological sites that may not be identified there's potential they may be affected. So then we would recommend that someone does a survey to look for those sites. If a site is found, we would assess to see if the site is eligible for the National Register. If it is, we would talk about how to avoid it or how to minimize impacts to it. Or if we cannot avoid it or minimize it, that would be considered an adverse effect. There are also times where people do survey and no historic properties are found or nothing eligible is found. So that makes our lives a lot easier because then we would say no adverse effect or no historic properties affected. So yeah, and we'd review all kinds of projects from gas pipelines to solar farms to these smaller agricultural activities. Like putting fence lines in, and then we also review HUD projects where they do lead abatements on houses or replacement windows, or so we look at all sorts of projects and we use the same process for each one of will this project affect or does it have potential to affect historic properties? What historic properties are within the project area? What are the impacts? Are they adverse? How do we resolve it through avoidance, minimization, or mitigation? So for y'all, when you're setting, so when DHR was setting up this program, we look at all the NRCS projects that we had reviewed in the past and came up with a threshold for review, one which we were comfortable in terms of preservation, but allowed some wiggle room so that we didn't have to review every single Ag PMP project. So the threshold for these that would trigger a review by DHR is work occurring within 100 feet of an archaeological site or historic preservation easement, or work within work with greater than half acre of cumulative ground disturbance. So if your project doesn't have one of those 2 criteria, you do not have to submit it to me for review. And when you put your BMPs into the website in the resource concerns tab, it will trigger that DHR review. It will show up under Department of Historic Resources, cultural resource, as a cultural resources hit. Here you see at the top where it says 44RM228. That is an archaeological site number. That's how we identify the sites. The triple number, trinomial number, is an architectural resource. So for instance, this project has an archaeological site and a preservation easement within 100 feet of it. Also, like I said, anything over than, half acre of cumulative ground disturbance will trigger that review. So again, if one of these categories has a resource number in it, the project will likely go to us for review. Or if the ground disturbance is calculated to be over half acre, it will need to go to DHR for review. If you get a hit for a historic resource, we recommend that the first step you do is go to our VCRIS page and look up the resource. The VCRIS data is in the background on the DCR website, but the resource doesn't really show up on the map. So you have to log into VCRIS to see where the resources of concern are and what they are. We recommend this because we want to encourage you to look at what you're proposing and what historic resources are in the project area. And if you can rework that project to avoid it, then you don't have to send it in for review. So if you can redesign a certain project element, where they're located, and re-input it into the DCR website, rerun the resource concern search, those resources may no longer pop up and you won't have to send it in. So for instance, there's like a water line that goes straight through an archaeological site. If you can move it 100 feet away, it will no longer trigger that review. So that's just one thing to see if there's any way you can. We want people to understand their resources nearby and work with their project to see if there's a way to avoid it. Because that's probably what one of our first questions will be if it gets sent to us. Can it be reworked? Can it be avoided? So here's a map of what that VCRIS data looks like when you create a map. You'll see the red outline, the red polygon is an archaeological site. We're pretending that this orange square with the green marker in it is where the project is. And if it's within 100 feet, we say, okay, well, this is what triggers the review. Now, in a case like this, it probably would not have any effects or adverse effects. So we would probably be okay with it, but it would still trigger that review because it's within 100 feet of a resource. But this is what that VCRIS map looks like. And you will have to make a VCRIS map when you submit something to DHR for review so that we understand where your project is in the areas of concern and how far away they are from the resource. So for this part of the presentation, I will show you how to submit projects in ePICS and also how to use VCRIS. We typically have a 30-day review period from the next business day after something has been submitted through ePICS. ePICS is our electronic project information exchange program system. If people have used it before, sometimes it crashes a lot, but it's gotten a lot better. So hopefully people who've been working on it for a while don't have to deal with the same kind of bugs that I've been dealing with over the years. So after you submit submit a project, ePICS will automatically send you a projects received email that you should save for your records. It has the project number. So if you don't receive a letter or an email from me saying no historic property is affected or no adverse effect, and it's been 30 days, you want to give us a call and give that DHR file number so that we can look it up in our system. If your project is on an easement, which often happens, landowners, will use easements for tax purposes, but then also, have reasons to go through the BMP program. And so if there is a project on an easement site, you will have to contact DHR easement staff, or the landowner should have already consulted with DHR easement staff, but we would need to have that letter saying that it has been looked at, because there are additional requirements for easement programs. It happens more than you think. We find that a lot of rural farmers with historic farms are taking advantage of every possible program they can to keep their farms going. And that does include the tax break that comes with having historic preservation easement. So the easement folks will be working with the landowner, but over here in review and compliance, we would need to see that documentation saying that easement has looked at the project. Now, this process is not designed, of course, to replace the consultation with easement program. And if the easement staff hasn't been yet contacted, it may delay the review. Usually I do check in just to make sure that it has been reviewed. So if it has not, make sure the landowner has done that and include that with the project information when it gets submitted through ePICS. So there's a few requirements for review. We need the project plan. So when you're submitting something through ePICS, at the end, you will include some documentation. And there's a few things that are required. The first one being the project plan map from the Ag BMP module. That way I can look at and see what is being done and where it's being done. The resource concern report from the module, and then a map of recorded resources from VCRIS. Those first three are the most important, especially the map of recorded resources. And later on, I'm going to show you how to use VCRIS and how to make that map, and what needs to be shown. We want to see the resource and we want to see the location of the project, like the project activities. We also need any corresponding archaeological site forms or architectural survey forms. And then please include a narrative description of the project. If there's going to be a fence line put in, how long is the fence, how many acres of disturbance, if there's ground disturbing activities, if it's an agricultural water line, how many feet, how deep will it be, how wide will it be. All that information should be included in the description so we have a better understanding of the potential impacts. So when you submit the project plan, please include an aerial and topo map. Project plan maps from the Ag BMP module are useful for us to, if you provide 2 copies, as the one with the aerial as the background and then one as with the topographic information. The topo can be a little bit more zoomed out, but it still gives us a good idea of what we're looking at, what kind of potential there is for archaeological sites in the region. Please include labels so we know what the elements are, and make sure that there's a map scale so we can understand how big this project is. So you see, as this one has the key, it has a scale, it has a drawn, and this would be the aerial. I don't think I put a topo on here. I did not. Then we would also need to see the same sort of map drawn in VCRIS. You can mark up a VCRIS map to show the BMP activities. VCRIS allows you to mark it up the map similarly to the DCR website. This helps the reviewer so we don't have to flip back and forth between the project map and the VCRIS map that doesn't have anything on it, so that we can really see what's going on and how far away from the resource project is. For instance, if you look at this map, you'll see, it's similar to that one, but now we see the archaeological site just north of it. We see there's an architectural district just north of it, which is probably what it's triggered the review in the first place, or it might be over a half acre of cumulative ground disturbance. But we can see that here's where the archaeological site is. It's north of the project area. It's not within the district. This kind of project would likely not have an adverse effect, but we need to be able to see how far away from the resources it is in order to make those kind of determinations. Here's the topo map. Again, the topo map in this situation can be helpful for understanding the topography by looking at the mapped BMPs and historic resources. With topos, you may want to zoom out just a little bit more than you do for the aerial, just due to the resolution of topos. It can also help identify mismapped resources. Many of our earlier archaeological sites in VCRIS are taken from paper maps and then digitized. So when we see something like an archaeological site that is found like on top of a hill where it wouldn't normally be, we can see that from the topo map, and it helps us have a better idea of where things are located. So for project description, this is probably one of the most important parts, the narrative description of the work that is going to be taking place. In the case of these projects, it will likely be what kind of BMP is being installed, to the extent of ground disturbance required for it to be installed. If you have information about square footage, length, width, depth, things like that, that's what we really need to know to review the project. We want you to list each BMP you are installing, and please be detailed as possible. Sometimes we will get just, install fence, install water line, but we need to know how long the water line will be, where it's going to be, how it's going to be installed, where it'll be located in the project area. And keep in mind that the reviewer is coming into this cold with no information about the project. Even though I've looked at a lot of these, it's still, someone else will have to look at it 10 years from now and understand why we made the decisions that we made. So we need as much information as possible about the project for review. EPICS has a series of fields that have to be completed, and EPICS will walk you through that type of information that we'd like to see in the submittal and provides guidance on what is expected in each field. In previous trainings, we discussed using information okay, that actually, those notes are older, never mind. So here's what you expect from DHR after you submit something through EPICS. There's several options for the kind of email you may get from us. The email may say no historic properties affected or no adverse effect to historic properties. That basically means you're good to go and you don't really need to do anything else. That email says that, we're not finding any major problems with the project. Yeah. The other options you may get, we might recommend a survey, depending on where the project is located and what sort of archaeological resources are nearby. Or there may be a survey recommended. We may be asking for additional information. Typically, it's when I ask for additional information because there wasn't enough provided in the first place. How many acres are being disturbed? How long is the project? How deep? That sort of information. And then the last response that we may send out is adverse effect. And that means there is a historic property in the project area and this project will have an adverse effect on it. Those happen very rarely with the BMP program, just because of the nature of the types of projects, but it doesn't mean it won't happen. Typically, again, with adverse effects, we want to avoid them, reduce them, or mitigate them. So if there's a eligible archaeological site in the middle of a field and there's a water line going through it, we'll see, can we avoid it? How can how can we reduce the impacts? Things like that, so that we can avoid that adverse effect. Typically, we'll ask a lot more questions before we make that recommendation, especially with the BMP program, because again, the nature of the impacts are pretty small. So if we're asking more questions or making recommendations of moving it, it's because we want to avoid that adverse effect letter. So here is the website link for EPICS. All users should register for an account. You don't need an invitation or license for EPICS. This is, again, the submittal system to submit a project to DHR for review. This is what the main page looks like when you log into EPICS, or the splash page before you log in. On the right side, you will hit login and then enter your user information. Once you've made a profile, it will autofill. So once you've registered and you're ready to submit an application, this will autofill from your profile. The red asterisk indicates a required field. So you need to make sure that there's a project name and county, agency involvement. So you will select the first option for agency involvement, and then let's see, where it is. Once you've selected the agency, you need to lock it in by hitting it and then hitting select. It's an older system, so you can't just click it. You have to click it and then hit select. Otherwise, it may not let you move forward. So for this and for these projects, you would do DCR Ag BMP. And then you would select yourself as the contact. This is the project description. This is where you would put that narrative description. It's good to include current condition if things have been really eroded away, and that is why you're doing a project there. Include that, because that tells us, that tells us the potential for archaeological sites that may be there. If it's been eroded away, any archaeological sites may have already been impacted by erosion activities. So listing that current condition is really helpful. Recent modifications, if it's been recently timbered or a farmhouse has been demolished, that's good for us to know so that we can ask more questions, or said if it's been timbered, if there were archaeological sites, they may have already been impacted. So we do need to know about any recent things. If there are, we need to know if there's buildings over 50 years old, barns, houses, things like that, within the project area. If your project involves direct modifications to the buildings, or if they're 50 years or older, please describe what that work will be. You don't have to fill it out if there's a historic building nearby and it's just like you're just installing a water line, although it doesn't hurt, but you don't have to fill out a lot of detail if the historic building is like if there's a historic farm house and we're 200 feet away and we're not doing anything to the building. You don't have to include that. Ground disturbance is probably the most important part for a lot of the ag BMP projects. List how much excavation is required for each type of practice, length of pipe or fence, size of stream crossing, things like that. Depth is also very important. Excavation depths for each known practice. So please be sure to include that, because that's probably those are the questions I ask the most when there's concerns. How big is it? How deep is it going to go? The APE, or area of potential effect, is typically the immediate area of work, but it can also include visual effects if there's anything that involves above ground work. So try before you are inputting your project into this system, try to determine if there's any elements that might be visible beyond the immediate work area. So then the AP might expand just a little bit. So if you're not necessarily ag BMP projects, but like if someone's putting up a cell phone tower, we would want to, look at beyond where the cell phone tower footprint is, but what the visual impacts would be. So things like fence lines would still have some visual impact, but not as great as something like a cell phone tower. But so think about how far can you see that fence line? Is there something nearby that will be visible to the fence line? For you can just write not applicable for consulting parties in the public involvement section. That's typical for the bigger 106 type projects. Once you've entered all the information, you will hit save and then continue to move to the next page. And because this website does have a history of crashing, make sure you save often. It's gotten a lot better and seems to crash less, but it is good to save always and save often. So save and then continue to move to the next page. Then you will have the additional contact page. You can add any additional people you would like CC'd on the correspondence, or you can leave it blank and continue if you are the only point of contact. I actually don't see the additional contacts. So if there is someone else that needs to be added to the need to be CC'd on the correspondence, if you put that in the narrative description or somewhere else that I can know to look for that, that'd be really helpful. Unfortunately, EPIC's website could use an overhaul on how they display information for me to review. So if someone else needs to be added, just let me know. After the screen will be the final page, and it will give you final information. But this is how you add those maps that I showed you earlier, the topo map and the VCRIS map and the project map. You'll go and add them here on this additional documentation. So you would hit document type, it'd be like map or whatever, and then select the file and upload it. You can only do one at a time, but this is probably one of the most important parts, is to include your data and make sure all of your documents are uploaded. There is a limit, I believe it's 10 megabytes. If you have to do something larger than 10 megabytes, you can use the VitaShare program to submit larger documents to us. But typically PDF maps do not take 10 megabytes. So that's usually not something that needs to be utilized very often with the Ag BMP program. And so this would, but once you've submitted your project, this is what the your application desktop will look like. You can see what is active, what has been closed, what is inactive. If you see that it's been over 30 days and you still have something that's active, you might want to check in with me to make sure that like I closed it out, or just make sure that there hasn't been any issues with the review. But this is what your desktop, your dashboard would look like once you've submitted projects. All right, next we'll talk about VCRIS. Again, so EPICS is the submission. That is how you send a project to be reviewed. The next VCRIS is how you make that map. It's also how you look up resources in the database to see if you can move or rework a project. VCRIS is the next stop you want to go to. If for any reason there's an account issue, you would talk with Jolene Smith. And I believe each district has a login. So if you don't know that, talk with your district person and get that login information. So here's what the login page looks like. You have to be sure to check this, otherwise it won't let you move forward. This is what the main dashboard looks like from VCRIS. Where the red arrow is located, that is Data Viewer. That's what you're going to hit next after you hit the dash, once you are on this dashboard screen. So you hit Data Viewer, and it'll take you to this screen. If your concerns tab popped up in archaeological site, you can type that in here versus DHR ID, like that RM0228. You would just input that here, 44RM0228, and then hit search. And then it will take you to a snapshot of what that archaeological site is. So this one is a campsite, and has not been evaluated. This is an art, if you wanted to search for an architectural site, you would hit the architecture tab and put in that number, the trinomial number. That's like for easements and stuff that might pop up. Once you have input your site or architectural number in, and it popped up on that snapshot, you could then hit the map tab. So see here, the map tab to the right of the search. You see it's up here in red. It'll then take you to the map area, and it'll show you the actual resource in context to the map. You can, and this is, sorry, and then when you need to submit the forms for the architectural resources, which I'll show you when I actually go live on VCRIS. This is what the architectural or architectural survey forms look like. These also need to be included when you submit a project. So if there is a archaeological site that was found in your Ag BMP area, this is the survey record that needs to be included. Another way to look up a project area, so say the BMP has over half acre of ground disturbance, you could put in the address up here and just hit search, and that'll take you, it'll just pop you right up there. Another way to find your project area is to zoom to the XY coordinates. So once you're on that map, you would go to tools and then scroll down to zoom to XY. You can use a variety. You could use UTMs, you could use degrees, minutes, seconds. There's a few other ways to input the coordinates, so it'll take you right to the project area. Then when you're making your map, you'll hit tools and then markup, and it'll take you to this drop-down menu. You can make a line, a polygon, an icon, and that's how you draw your map. you see, I drew a polygon here. And then to switch between topo and aerial, you will go over here to most recent aerials. You can also select topo map, which would look something like this. Now to make the map, you will hit print, and then it'll say view export. When you view export, it'll create this PDF, and this looks like something similar to what what I showed earlier in the presentation. And here's our contact information. After this, I guess I'm going to have to change my sharing to be on actual VCRIS so I can log in real time instead of just the screenshots that I had in the presentation. But if you need to contact anyone, it ended. If you need to contact Roger Kirchen, he is the Director of Review and Compliance Division, or me, I'm the Project Review Archaeologist. Now let's see. I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a second, and then I'm going to pull up VCRIS. And then I'll show you how to use VCRIS in live. Okay, stop share. Right, let me see. Let me share different screen now. That one. All right, can you see the VCRIS login page?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I have logged, let's hit login, make sure I put in the right password. All right, so here is the dashboard. Once you've logged in, you'll see this dashboard. You won't really need to do anything with archaeology projects or architecture projects. That's for people who do survey work for archaeological companies or architecture club. They're the ones they're actually inputting information into VCRIS. So you don't need to worry about these tabs up here. The main one you're going to want to remember is data viewer. So once we hit data viewer, it takes us to this search page. The search page is your main stop. If your resource tab had a hit, you can put in the site number. So I don't know. I think you do have to put in the whole number, including the 0. Then you hit that, and then you hit search. You can also, if you just want to browse, you can browse other things by keeping the. But for your purposes, you put in the site number and then hit search, and it's going to take us to the details. So this is that main snapshot that I showed in the slideshow, and it gives you you can click around in the tabs. It'll give you some more information. So location, like where is it? It's in Rockingham County. What are the components? It's a pre-contact site. It's Native American. It's on a floodplain. CRM events, that stands for Cultural Resource Management events. So that means in 1979, this was first identified and recorded by Thunderbird. In the 70s, they weren't super great about taking notes, so that's why a lot of this information has not been filled out. If there's any associated files, you can look up the original record. Like this is what the original VCRIS records look like. Like it was before VCRIS existed, so it was called like the DSS, their database. So is go back, man. What? This Zoom bar is in my way, and so I can't. Where is? Come on. Can't see. Sorry, the Zoom bar is in my way. Can't click the stuff at the top of the screen. All right, so we have gone through the details. When you want to go to the map and see it, you'll hit the map up here. So we have searched, and then now we hit map, and it pulls up the site. So here we see the archaeological site RM224. You can zoom out, see where it's located. When you want to change it to a topographic view, you will go over here to the right side where it says recent aerials, and you will have a drop-down menu. So you can change it. See, this isn't very super helpful. We just see a bunch of green trees. So this is why that topo map is helpful. We see where it's located on the topographic map. So it's on this little edge here. You can also use a road map, but that's not super helpful. So the topo map and the most recent aerial map are the two that are the base layers that we want to see when making a map. Next, what you'll do if you have to mark up your project, you'll go over here to Tools and down and hit Markup. So if we want to draw a line, we'll click Line and just draw. Double click to end the line. Same thing with Polygon. Once you're done, you'll double click and that will create your polygon. This is very important. Oftentimes I'll get a map of the APE with nothing drawn on it, so I don't know where the BMP is located in relation to the site. You can drop an icon if it's going to be just a point, and then save. You can also freehand it. Once you click it and then save, it'll create. You can. I do encourage playing around and doing different kinds of drawings so that you get used to it, because I do need that information when reviewing it. So once you've drawn all the little BMPs that you need, you can hit X, close that out, and then now you want to print your map. You will hit print and zoom out, make sure center it. And then once you've centered it within this square box with the dotted lines, you will hit export, and that will create a PDF. Hopefully, sometimes it doesn't always work. And then it'll say view export, and that will create the PDF. Boop. As I mentioned before, if you want to zoom to a site, because say you had something over half acre, but there were no resources nearby, you can zoom to it using the XY coordinates. You can use decimal degrees, degrees minutes, UTMs, whatever information you have, you can input that here. I don't have any coordinates to zoom to right now, but that is how you would zoom to that site. You can also put in the street address, and the search will get you there. But I know a lot of times the farms may not, the street address may not actually match up to where your BMP is located. Over here on the left side is the layers. You can also turn off certain layers. So if you want to turn off a graphic that you drew, you just click that. If you want to turn on, you want to know if there was ever a phase 1 survey done, an archaeological survey, you can click that and it will turn up. You'll see this little green polygon over here shows that there were surveys done nearby, not within our project area though. You can also add other data, or by just turning on the different resource tabs. Let's see. Oh yeah. So we'll go back to the search. So we'll go back. So if you'll remember, I said that we needed the VCRIS forms as part of the submission. So we've created our map. We have both topo and aerial, and we hit export. We have both of those, but now we need the VCRIS forms for RM224. Go to details, and then again that takes us back to this. You can our snapshot or location up here where it says printer friendly. You will hit printer friendly, and it will create a PDF of those VCRIS forms, and that's what needs to be included as part of the submission. So again, the most important parts are narrative description, which is within ePix itself, But then the data that we need is the project map and the VCRIS maps. And then if there are sites, including those site forms. So you would hit printer friendly and it will create the PDF. So no, that's we could do, let me see, try to think of another site. I don't know. Let's see what's, you could search another site. And again, you could also search by architectural number too. Oop. Sometimes it doesn't go there, so gotta give it a second. Okay, let's see. Maybe now we hit map. We've selected a new site. Now we're in a new area. And we're on topo, aerial, most recent aerial. So this archaeological site used to be in a field, but is now under a parking lot. We probably reviewed it at some point before. You can tell it was in a surveyed area by the was that the airport? So you can just input just about any site number in here and it'll take you to that site. And again, you could put your address in. Another easy thing. So bookmarks are areas that have already been saved in VCRIS. So you hit bookmarks, it'll take you, in the city of Richmond, it'll take you right to city of Richmond, which there aren't a lot of BMP activities in the city, but it's good to know. You can see all the resources that have been recorded and assessed and that are located in VCRIS. Let's go back to I forget what number we did. So over here, if we scroll over, and sometimes you'll get overlapping polygons, and it's kind of hard to click around. One of the things you can do is identify, and then you could hit point, and then take a point, and it'll tell you everything that's at that point. So there's an archaeological resource, there's a phase 1 survey, there's an architectural resource. You can also create a shape of like a project area, and it'll list every single resource that's in that project area. It's a nifty tool, but probably with BMP, because of the type of activities, you won't need to really use this very often. But if you had a large project area, you can create a custom shape and it'll just make a list of all of the resources in it, which is pretty helpful when there's a large project area. Do we have any questions? I know I kind of go fast, but it's hard to know like what people need to know since I look at it every day. All right. So again, it doesn't sound like we have any questions, but
I have a question, sorry.
yes.
My question is, it sounds like if we're in the CAS system through DCR, inputting our BMP, that it would trigger whether or not we need to put information into VCRIS and EPICS. And if we do need to, then we have to create an account both for EPICS and VCRIS and make multiple maps for each system.
You just need to.
Am I understanding that right?
No. So you will put your information into the BMP module, and it will tell you if there's a resource of concern. If there is something within 100 feet, or if it has ground disturbance of over half acre, then you submit it to DHR. EPICS is the submission, is how you submit something to us. That you do need an account for. Whoever's submitting needs to create an account. For VCRIS, it goes by district. There should be a district login, so there doesn't need to be an individual login. You only need to make maps in VCRIS, and then you attach them to the application in ePix. See if I can. So this is VCRIS. This is how you create the map. This is also when you get that hit that there is something nearby. If you say, oh, it's, we're really close to an archaeological site, but we can move it, our BMP, you can do that. And then once you have redesigned your project and where you put it into the BMP module, you won't get that hit anymore. So you don't have to submit it to DHR for review. But if it continues to have the hit, then you do have to make the map, just 2 maps, and then submit those in ePix. So this is VCRIS. VCRIS is for making maps and for seeing what resources are nearby, and ePix is for submitting the project. Let's see.
Okay, and you said we have you said each district has a login for VCRIS?
Yes.
Okay.
And then for the so this is the ePix login. So for ePix, which again, that's the submission, everyone should have their own. But for VCRIS, the district should have a login because it's that one costs money. For ePix, it's free.
And if you have questions on who was made that person to get into VCRIS, who has the access for each district, you can just let me know. Send me an email to ask, and I can look up and see who that person is.
Okay, thank you.
And making the maps, the 2 maps should be pretty easy. I said we need 1 topo and 1 aerial, but once you've drawn your why is this freezing up on me? Once you've drawn your project area, you just have to toggle between that aerial versus topo map. So you topo, print, and then you just toggle and you say recent aerial, print, and that's how you create the map. So all you have to do is once you've drawn your BMP, it's pretty easy to make up the two maps. And then once the PDFs have been created, that is what you submit in ePix. So this is our DHR's website, and you can also find the ePix web address here. But the ePix web address will be on the notes in the PDF that I will send.
Thanks. Jennifer, do you mind putting your email in the chat, or maybe it can be sent out to us later?
Yeah,
so that if we have any questions, we can reach out.
Yeah, I will do that now. It should be included on the slideshow that I'll send a PDF out, which will let's see, there's that. So now you have my email address if you have any questions, and the email address will also be on the slideshow. And with the slideshow, it'll have like those screenshots that are helpful for understanding how to make a map again. And if there's any questions, you can always give me a call. I'm in the office usually on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but you can always email me too.
Contact information you can also get from the guidance documents. So when you're in the system, MCAS, you can see it through either the link on the resource report or under forms, you should be able to find it as well. But
there any other questions? I know like I go pretty fast.
No other questions this morning? While I wait just one more minute to see if there's any others, would like to thank the Association One for hosting us on their Zoom account, and also Jenny for providing our information this morning from Department of Historic Resources. Those that are attending this training for their certification, don't forget to put that in your course completions, put that date in there. For your contact hours, you'll put that date in as well for attending the yesterday and today. Those that are certified, I'll just take a moment to remind you to look at your contact hours, see where you're at, and also double check your certification dates, because we will be having some come up for renewal again this coming year in 2024. So take a look at that, make sure everything's still on track. Reach out if you have any questions. Quite a few of you I'll probably see in the coming weeks for another training, our final wrap-up course. I know for annual meeting, also make sure you're signing up for that if you're going. Get your sessions lined up. There will be some contact hours there. They have not been set yet, but as soon as we get all the details, they'll be coming out. So, all right, last chance for questions. All right. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we will see you next go round.
Thanks. Have a good day.